Imagine waking up one morning to discover that your life savings, money you had spent decades earning, had simply disappeared. Not because of a stock market crash, not because of a war or natural disaster, but because one man had spent years convincing thousands of people that their money was safe when, in reality, it had been gone for a very long time. This is not the story of a violent criminal. There were no bank robberies, no high-speed police chases, and no elaborate heists carried out under the cover of darkness. Instead, this was a crime committed in boardrooms, investment offices, and conference rooms. It was carried out with confidence, reputation, and one of the most valuable currencies in the world. This is the story of Bernie Madoff. Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born on April 29, 1938, in the borough of Queens in New York City. He grew up in a modest household as the son of Ralph and Sylvia Madoff, who were immigrants with roots in Europe. His father worked various jobs, including as a plumber, before trying his hand in the securities industry by starting a small brokerage firm called Gibraltar Securities along with his wife. That firm eventually faced regulatory challenges and was shut down by authorities, an event that may have left an impression on young Bernie about the rules and risks of the financial sector. Growing up in the Rockaways area, Bernie attended public schools and showed an early interest in business and making his way in the world. He was known to friends and family as ambitious and personable, someone who could connect with people easily. During his high school years at Far Rockaway High School, he met Ruth Alpern, who would become his high school sweetheart and later his wife. They married in 1959. Bernie went on to study at Hofstra University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in political science in 1960. He even started law school at Brooklyn Law School, but decided it wasn't the path for him and left to pursue opportunities in finance instead. Support himself during these years, he took on practical jobs like installing sprinklers and working as a lifeguard at Jones Beach, saving up money for his future ventures. With around $5,000 in savings and a loan from his father-in-law, Bernie founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC in 1960 at the young age of 22. At the outset, the firm was a small operation focused on trading penny stocks, which are low-priced shares often traded over the counter rather than on major exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange. Madoff acted as a market maker, meaning he helped facilitate trades by matching buyers and sellers and providing liquidity to the market. This was a competitive but innovative space in the 1960s. The financial industry was evolving rapidly with new technologies and regulations following the Great Depression and the establishment of the Securities and Exchange Commission in the 1930s. Madoff positioned himself well by embracing early forms of electronic trading. In the 1970s, his firm became one of the pioneers in using automated quotation systems, which laid groundwork for what would become NASDAQ. Over time, Bernard Madoff Investment Securities grew into a respected brokerage, and Bernie himself served as a chairman of the NASDAQ stock market at various points. He built a reputation as a forward-thinking professional who understood how to make trading more efficient and accessible for participants. The legitimate side of his business thrived, handling significant trading volume and earning him a place among Wall Street insiders. He and Ruth had two sons, Mark and Andrew, who would eventually join the family firm in different capacities. The Madoff family lived a comfortable upper-middle-class life, with properties in Manhattan, a vacation home in Montauk on Long Island, and later a residence in Palm Beach, Florida. On the surface, Bernie Madoff represented the classic American success story, a man from modest beginnings who had climbed the ladder through hard work, innovation, and smart networking. His father-in-law, a practicing accountant, helped by referring clients to the investment advisory side of the business that Bernie operated alongside the brokerage. These referrals provided an important boost in the early years. However, as the years progressed, the investment advisory business began to take on a different character. According to Madoff's eventual admissions, what started as legitimate investment activities gradually transitioned into something far more deceptive. By the early 1990s, and possibly earlier, the advisory arm had evolved into a massive Ponzi scheme, one that would grow to become the largest known in history. Understand this, it is important to recall what a Ponzi scheme is. Named after Charles Ponzi, who ran a notorious fraud in the 1920s involving international reply coupons, a Ponzi scheme is a form of fraud where returns to earlier investors are paid using funds from newer investors rather than from actual profits generated by legitimate investments. The operator fabricates records to show consistent gains, attracting more money while creating an illusion of success. In Madoff's case, clients would entrust their money to his firm with the expectation that it would be invested in a conservative, steady strategy often described as a split-strike conversion approach. This supposedly involved buying blue-chip stocks, selling call options against them, and using put options for protection, combined with Treasury securities for stability. Madoff promised reliable annual returns, typically in the range of 10 to 12% or more, even during market downturns. These returns were remarkably consistent, which in hindsight was a major red flag because real markets fluctuate. In reality, for the vast majority of the advisory accounts, little to no actual trading occurred in line with the described strategy. Instead, Madoff's operation used incoming funds from new clients to pay out requested withdrawals or profits to existing ones. Fake account statements were generated monthly or quarterly, showing phantom trades and gains that never happened. The firm maintained the facade through careful record-keeping on paper, while the actual money flow relied on a continuous influx of fresh capital. The scheme relied heavily on trust and exclusivity. Madoff cultivated an image of sophistication and selectivity. Not just anyone could invest. Clients often came through personal connections, country clubs, or feeder funds that funneled money from wealthy individuals, families, charities, and institutions around the world. The Jewish community in particular was heavily represented among victims due to affinity ties, though the fraud crossed all demographics. Many investors were drawn by the steady performance reports and the reputation of Madoff as a Wall Street insider. Over decades, the reported assets under management ballooned. By late 2008, the fake statements showed nearly $65 billion in client accounts, though the actual principal invested was closer to $20 billion, with direct losses later estimated around $18 billion after partial recoveries. The scale was unprecedented, affecting thousands of people across continents. Sustaining such a scheme for so long required more than just deception with clients. It involved navigating regulatory scrutiny. Madoff's firm had a legitimate brokerage division that conducted real trades, which helped lend credibility. The advisory business was presented in a way that avoided some registration requirements or full audits that might have exposed the fraud earlier. Nevertheless, there were warnings. As far back as 1992, the SEC looked into related entities like Avellino and Baines, which had invested heavily with Madoff. The case was closed after funds were returned, but it was an early signal. In the 2000s, a financial analyst and whistleblower named Harry Markopolos repeatedly contacted the SEC with detailed analyses showing that Madoff's returns were statistically impossible for the claimed strategy. Markopolos submitted memos outlining dozens of red flags, including the lack of independent verification, the perfect consistency of gains, and the sheer volume that would have dominated options markets if real. Despite multiple examinations and investigations by the SEC over the years, the agency failed to connect the dots or conduct a thorough probe that included verifying trades with third parties. Later reviews by the SEC's Inspector General highlighted systemic shortcomings, including inadequate staffing, lack of skepticism toward a prominent figure, and missed opportunities to dig deeper. These regulatory lapses allowed the scheme to continue far longer than it should have. Other financial institutions and professionals had occasional suspicions, but the flow of money continued. Banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, which held key accounts for Madoff, faced later scrutiny and settlements for not filing certain suspicious activity reports promptly. The scheme fed on itself, with Madoff and a small group of employees handling the back-office work to fabricate the necessary documents. Family members held important positions, including his brother Peter as senior managing director and chief compliance officer, though many associates later maintained they were unaware of the full extent of the fraud. The operation was centered in the Lipstick Building in Midtown Manhattan, where the advisory business occupied a separate floor with limited access. The end came amid the global financial crisis of 2008. As stock markets plunged due to the housing bubble burst and banking failures, many Madoff clients sought to withdraw their funds for safety. Requests totaling around $7 billion poured in, far more than the available liquid assets could cover since most of the money had been paid out over the years or never invested. Facing the impossibility of meeting these redemption demands, Bernie Madoff confided in his sons Mark and Andrew on December 10, 2008. He reportedly told them that the advisory business was all one big lie and essentially a giant Ponzi scheme. Devastated and recognizing the gravity, the sons contacted federal authorities. The very next day, December 11, 2008, FBI agents arrested Bernie Madoff in his Manhattan apartment. He was initially charged with securities fraud, and the news exploded across media outlets worldwide, sending shockwaves through the financial community and among his many victims. Investigators quickly moved into the firm's offices to begin unraveling the massive fraud. Madoff cooperated to some extent at first, but later provided limited details on the mechanics. The Securities Investor Protection Corporation stepped in to oversee the liquidation and recovery efforts for clients. Forensic accounting revealed the staggering scale, with fabricated gains and missing funds. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felony counts, including securities fraud, investment advisor fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, false statements, perjury, false filings with the SEC, and theft from an employee benefit plan. During his allocution in court, he acknowledged that his actions were wrong and criminal, stating he was deeply sorry, though many victims felt his remorse was insufficient. He admitted turning his wealth management business into a Ponzi scheme that had operated for years. Sentencing hearing on June 29, 2009, before U.S. District Judge Denny Chin was a poignant moment. Victims and their representatives gave emotional statements describing ruined retirements, lost life savings, devastated charities, and profound betrayals of trust. Some spoke of family members who had passed away without recovering their funds, while others detailed how the fraud forced them to sell homes, delay medical care, or abandon long-planned futures. Judge Chin described the crimes as extraordinarily evil, noting the staggering human toll beyond mere financial loss. He imposed the maximum sentence of 150 years in federal prison, along with forfeiture orders totaling over $170 billion to be used toward restitution. Madoff was remanded immediately and later transferred to the Federal Correctional Complex in Butner, North Carolina, a medium-security facility with a medical center. In prison, Madoff served his sentence as inmate number 61,720-7054. Reports from those years described him participating in prison routines, working in various jobs, and interacting with other inmates. Some accounts suggested he was treated with a degree of notoriety, even respect by some for his financial knowledge, though he also faced health challenges. He suffered from chronic kidney disease and required dialysis treatments toward the end. His family life was fractured. His son Mark died by suicide in 2010 on the anniversary of the arrest, a tragic aftermath. His other son Andrew passed away from cancer in 2014. Ruth Madoff faced significant asset forfeitures but was not criminally charged and attempted to rebuild a quiet life. Appeals for compassionate release or sentence reduction were denied, including one in 2020. Madoff expressed some reflections on his actions in interviews, acknowledging the pain caused but maintaining aspects of his narrative. Bernie Madoff's final days came in April 2021. On April 14 of that year, at the age of 82, he died at the Federal Medical Center in Butner from complications related to chronic kidney disease. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed his death, bringing an end to a life that had once symbolized success on Wall Street but became defined by one of the greatest betrayals in financial history. His passing was met with mixed reactions, relief for some victims that a chapter had closed, and continued sorrow for those whose losses remained unhealed. Efforts to recover assets continued long after, with the trustee recovering billions through settlements, asset sales, and claims against related parties, though many victims received only partial restitution. Madoff's scandal left a lasting legacy on the financial industry and regulatory framework. It exposed weaknesses in oversight, leading to reforms aimed at stronger due diligence, better whistleblower protections, and more rigorous examinations of investment advisors. It underscored timeless lessons about investment. If returns seem too good to be true or too consistent, they likely are. Investors are encouraged to verify strategies independently, diversify holdings, understand fees and risks, and work with transparent professionals. For regulators and professionals, it highlighted the need for skepticism, thorough verification of trades, and following up on anomalies regardless of reputation. The case also sparked broader discussions on affinity fraud, where trust within communities can be exploited, and the ethical responsibilities of those in positions of financial power. In reflecting on Bernie Madoff's journey from a young entrepreneur installing sprinklers to a central figure in Wall Street innovation, and ultimately to a convicted fraudster serving a symbolic life sentence, we see the dual edges of ambition and deception. His early legitimate contributions to electronic trading and market efficiency stand in stark contrast to the harm inflicted by the Ponzi scheme that operated for roughly 2 decades. The way he was caught, through a family confession amid a market crisis, illustrates how external pressures can expose internal weaknesses. His final days in a prison medical facility, far from the luxury he once enjoyed, serve as a reminder of the long-term consequences of choices that prioritize personal gain over integrity. This story is not just about one man, but about systems, human psychology, and the importance of accountability. Thousands of victims, including retirees, charities supporting important causes, and everyday families, suffered immensely. Some lost everything, forcing them to rely on social services or family support in their later years. Scandal eroded confidence in parts of the financial system at a time when trust was already fragile due to the 2008 crisis. Yet from the ashes, stronger practices emerged. Today, tools like independent custodians, transparent reporting, and advanced data analytics help mitigate similar risks. Educational resources on personal finance emphasize due diligence and the value of index funds or diversified portfolios over chasing outsized returns. As we conclude this extensive look at Bernie Madoff's life, from his beginnings in Queens through the heights of his career, the depths of his fraud, the swift justice following his arrest, and his quiet end in federal custody, let us carry forward the key takeaways. Financial markets are powerful tools for growth and opportunity when built on honesty and transparency. Always question, verify, and prioritize long-term stability over promises of quick or guaranteed wealth. Support strong regulatory bodies while holding individuals accountable. And remember that behind every statistic of loss are real people whose stories deserve compassion and remembrance.